the whole issue of rereading is so interesting. I made a video talking about my kind of journey into rereading ages ago. It's such an old video, but I will leave it linked up above. And it's something that I only started doing consciously a few years ago. So welcome to the sort of rereading tag. Welcome back, or if you are new here, welcome. My name is Katrina and I make bookish content here on this channel at least twice a week, and then movie reviews or book to movie content here at the weekend. All of my social links are in the description box below, including my blog and my Goodreads, so you can keep up with my reading and watching and rereading in between times. If you enjoy a tag video, I will leave my playlist of tag videos linked up above, so you can go through and watch. And this is another tag that I saw on Sarah's Reading Nook channel. I will leave her video, including the tag questions and the original video, in the description box below. And if you do this tag, let me know in the comments, because I would love to come and watch and leave you some comments in exchange. So let's get on with this. As I say, I really only started to hardcore reread when I moved to Denver, because I had more time to read. In case you haven't noticed, I read more than I used to. In case you've been following my blog for a while, read more than I used to, because I do not work full-time now, and so I have time to read all the books, which means I also have time to reread all the books. I have a couple of books that I had reread before, but I was never much of a big rereader before. So on the scale of almost never to all the time, I would say I have at least one reread a month. I should actually find the data and let you know the actual data of my books that I've read this year and how many of them have been rereads, because there've been quite a few. So far this year I have reread 16 books out of the 215 I have read. So percentage wise, it's not very high this year. I did my Shopaholic and my iHeart series reread last year, so that'll be why it's slightly less this year, but that still equates to more than one a month. And I also have 2 rereads coming up. I think I have 2 on my TBR this month for book to movie adaptation videos, so that will be added to. I will let you know, obviously, at my year-end wrap-up, how many of my books read this year were rereads. Question number 2. Has that changed over your reading life? I kind of just answered that. Yes, I never used to be a rereader. I never had time to do any rereading. There is one book, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, which is basically the only book I'd reread, because it's something that I read with different groups of pupils at school. If you've been following the channel for a little while, you'll know, or if I've ever taught you, you'll know. But yes, it's definitely changed, and I am so pleased that I am now a rereader, because it's opened up different possibilities in different ways, thanks to rereading. Number 3, when do you reread? Immediately after or years later when the mood strikes? So yeah, there was that one book that I'm going to talk about in a moment that I reread once a year with children at school. Then I would tend to, if there's a sequel to a book coming out that I've been waiting for, or the next book in a series, sometimes I will go back and read the book before or read the rest of the series. My page tune project that I had at the start of this year, I just decided I wanted to make sure I'd read all the page tunes. I wanted to get you guys involved, and so a lot of those rereads were for that project. And then I will also reread if a book is being made into a a film. So before watching Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda / Love, Simon, I reread that book, and then I wanted to reread the 2 Creekwood books before the next Creekwood book came out, and so I reread Simon again and reread Leah for the first time. And then sometimes I'll just take a notion that I want to reread a book. And then question 4 is, why do you reread books? I kind of covered that as well. If there's a book to movie coming out, if there's a new book coming out, if there's a long awaited sequel coming out, or just if the mood strikes me. I reread Big Bones last year by Laura Dockrill when it was released in the US as My Ideal Boyfriend is a Croissant, because I just needed some Laura Dockrill in my life, and I reread it as an audiobook rather than rereading as a physical book. And that kind of brings me on to question number 5, which is, how do you reread? Faster, slower, just the best bits? And I would say, on the whole, when I'm rereading a book, generally I will reread the audiobook rather than rereading the physical book. Probably if it's something that I've read sort of pre my rediscovery of audiobooks, because I used to read a lot of audiobooks when I was younger, but if it's kind of when I would get the paperback from Sainsbury's or Tesco's when it came out, or when I would go to a book event and get a paperback signed and then read that version, I will tend to then go ahead and pick up the audiobook as a reread. Especially if it's a book to movie adaptation, I tend to then not have a copy of the original book, and so I will get the audiobook from my library, or if I've got an Audible credit and I know I want to keep it, I will do that. I have a couple of like book to movie adaptations that are coming up. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on those, and both of those I did not keep the physical copy that I have, and so I had an audiobook copy that I already had of one of them because I pre-ordered it, and then the other one I got an audiobook copy from my library, and so I am rereading via audio. So that's kind of, how do you reread? I would love to know how you reread in the comments, because I don't know if it's just me that tends to do a different format if I reread. Do you have like a loved copy of one of your books? Do you have did you do it on audiobook to begin with and you're rereading it on audiobook now? How do you, if you are a rereader, how do you reread? It's an interesting one. I'd be really interested to hear your answers on that one. And then what do you reread more specifically? So I have some examples of rereading here. I've already given you a couple of examples, but as you know, I reread the whole of the I Heart series before I Heart Forever came out, and then I reread again the whole of the I Heart series before I Heart Hawaii came out. I was lucky enough that my library had all of the audiobooks for these, and so I reread these all on audio, and I have a video talking about my rereading experience and my just general love of Lindsay Kelk. I do need to reread some of her standalones. My library also has copies of those, so even though I have signed copies up here, right here on my shelf, I'll probably reread via audio. And then the another one that I made a whole series talking about is the Shopaholic series, which I again did them all on audio aside from so I've reread this first one twice, and I've reread Shopaholic Takes Manhattan or Shopaholic Abroad, depending where you are, a couple of times, where I actually reread the physical copy, which was interesting, and then I decided to pick up the audiobooks. But as you'll know, in rereading the audiobooks, they changed narrator and they changed the pronunciation of one of the characters' names, and they also changed the accent one of the characters had multiple times. So that rereading experience via audio wasn't great. So if I was rereading these again, I might just go for picking up the physical copies of them. And these were just, I read this one before the last book in the series came out. I reread this one before the last book in the series came out. I reread some of the Page Toon ones so I could read all of Page Toon's back catalogue and share that experience with you. And there was a few that were new reads to me and a few that were rereads to me. And so those are books I have reread because I enjoyed them. I've given you a couple of other examples here, but that kind of leads into the next question. Is there a book which you found better when you reread it? Every time I reread the I Heart series, I'm just reminded of how much I love that series. And you'll know that I Heart Paris is my least favourite book in the series, and there are reasons behind that, not because it's a bad book, not because it's badly written. It's a great book. It's just as well written as all the other books in the series. I'm just not a Paris person. But now, having reread that one twice, I'm like, yeah, this was good. This is high drama. I like all the drama in this book. I like all the adventure in this book. And so it did go up in my estimations when I reread it. But another book that I recently reread that I may reread again, because she has a kind of new follow-up book coming up to this one, is non-fiction. This is my very special, beautiful edition of How to Be a Woman by Caitlin Moran, and I did reread this one because my library had the audiobook, and I first read this one on a train journey between York and Glasgow and York, and really loved it. But I really enjoyed doing the audio, and because it's narrated by Caitlin Moran as well, I got it on another level. I was also rereading it about 10 years, maybe 12 years after I read it for the first time. No, it can't have been that, because it wasn't published that long ago. But I was rereading it some years after, and so I let's see, 2011. So yeah, I was reading it like 8-9 years after it came out, and so yeah, reading it in a different place in my life, I got different things out of it. And also rereading it, having Caitlin Moran read it to me, I got more out of it. So this one was definitely better on a reread. I loved it so much, and it's still one of my all-time favorite books, and I loved it even more on a reread. So that is a good thing. Yeah, highly recommend that. And yes, she does have a like sort of follow-up non-fiction coming out in next month, and I'm like, oh, I could reread this, or I might do as suggested in the comments there and maybe just pick up like a couple of bits, because these are essays, so I could just pick up some of my favourite essays or reread out of order perhaps. Very excited about her new book, very excited. And then, is there a book that was worse having reread it? So this book, the early Shopaholic novels, Becky comes off as like a really, I buddy read this the first time I reread it, and I was buddy reading it with Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany, and she was like, yeah, I don't like the fact that she's lying all the time. She's just really dishonest. She's very shallow. And I think that, yeah, you can see Becky like that. I think because I read it when I did, Becky is like near and dear to my heart, and I've watched her grow and develop over the course of the series. But if you pick this book up now, having never met Becky Brandon, and you kind of didn't know her story and the amount that she's kind of come on as the series has progressed, I can see why you would think that, absolutely. Also, if you didn't live in the UK when this book is set, a lot of the references are very dated. They refer to shops that don't exist anymore and kind of a way of life that doesn't exist anymore. This first book, internet shopping wasn't a thing, like contactless cards weren't a thing, Apple Pay wasn't a thing, and so the way she does some things does seem very dated, but I love that, and it takes me back to that time. But if you're picking up this book for the first time, I can see that. Also, I reread, for making my book versus movie, link up above, for one day. I reread this one, and I reread it on audio, whereas I have this special edition, and the first time I read it I had a paperback copy. The first time I read it I was 18, and so this seemed very different on a reread than it did the first time. I think part of that was because I knew the ending, and part of it again was that I sort of idolized their relationship, and then being at a different point in my life, I saw their relationship very differently when I reread it. So it's not that it was worse, I just saw it differently when I reread it, and that was really interesting. I probably wouldn't reread this one again, but I do still like having my beautiful special edition, gorgeous book in a box on my shelf. So yes, even though I probably won't reread it, I still want this on my shelf because it's very pretty. And then, which is the one book you've reread the most times? I mean, yeah, I've talked about the fact that Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, I've reread that one twice, so I've read it a total of 3 times. Confessions of a Shopaholic, same. I Heart New York, same. But it's Wonder. You knew I couldn't, not only can I not have a video where I don't mention Lindsay Kelk, I also can't have a video where I don't mention Wonder. I've read this with several groups of children. I read it myself, then I read it with some children, then the next year I read it with some more children, the next year I read it with some more children. I reread it before watching the film. I have a book versus movie. I have a whole video talking about this one, and this is my special edition. I haven't reread this one in a little while, and I feel like every time I pick this book up, I say, I haven't read this one in a while. I'm probably due to read this one soon. And this one also has the like extra books in, like the Julian chapter, and also it's just amazing. It's just beautiful and stunning, and I love it. Yeah, it has the Julian chapter in, and it also has I would like you to tell me which other books it has in when it comes. It has Shingling, it has Pluto, is that the other one? Yeah, so it's got all the things from Augie and me, and you know, always #choose kind, always. So yes, this is the book that I have reread the most often. Interestingly, I have like a Barnes & Noble special edition, I have the movie tie-in edition, and then I have this beautiful edition. But the Barnes & Noble special edition is the only one that I've read multiple times. I haven't read the movie tie-in edition, and I haven't read the, oh, it's a good noise, this hefty tome that's like 1,000,000 pages long. Should take part in the Tome Topple readathon. 700 pages this one is. Fun times, but because it's middle grade, it's a quick read. So yeah, so that's the one that I reread the most, and I like a reread these days. I hope you enjoyed this video. I would love to know your answers to some of these questions if you aren't going to do this tag. If you are going to do this tag, leave me a link in the comments. If not, let me know the answer to some of the questions in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you again to Sarah's Reading Nook for finding a really interesting tag that I haven't done yet. I will be keeping an eager eye on your channel so that I can look out for any other tags, because apparently you're just keeping me in tags these days. I love it. Just disclaimer, Sarah didn't tag me to do this one, but I just keep doing tags that she does. So, you know, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down, but tell me why in the comments. Make sure you are subscribed so that you don't miss out on any future bookish content coming your way, and hit that notification bell so that you get notified as soon as I upload. I will be back with more bookish content and book to movie content for you very soon. Some more rereads coming up there. Thank you so much for watching.